Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jerred Moon here, and we're taking a quick break in the series. So hopefully you've been enjoying the series where I'm talking about programming, really getting into the weeds of just exactly how we program. So we made it 5 episodes deep into a 13-part series, but I didn't want to leave you hanging if you weren't enjoying nerding out on programming with me. Then I want to interject some other content in here before we get back onto it, continuing into the endurance continuum, and we will pick up part 6 in the next podcast episode. But there's the reality of life that I want to talk about today, and it's how you can really fail going into February. It's how you can fail for the rest of the year. I think it's whatever the first week in January, is it January 7th or 2 weeks into January, something is Quitter's Day. I'd never heard that before until this year, believe it or not. I know a lot of people are very familiar with it, but it's like most people start, really ambitious. They have these big goals in January and then they quit. They don't do it. And I've talked a lot about these kind of things over the years. A lot of it is perfectionism. People, when they're not perfect, when they didn't do something 7 days in a row, whatever it is, they quit because they're not perfect. And I always remind people that that's not how life really works anywhere else. If you were sick for a day of work, or you weren't the best husband or father or spouse or whatever today, it doesn't mean that you get to quit. It doesn't mean that it's over. Because you gotta stick with those things. You gotta keep pushing forward and just doing what little you can. So if you want to continue to fail, there are 2 very easy ways to do that, and that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So the first one is you do too many different things. You're just doing too many different things. I get it. We all want to do a lot of things with our lives. We want to travel. We want to make more money. We want to be fit. We want to be the best we can in our relationships. But the reality is we can't be the best at everything all the time. You can balance a lot of these things, but to truly go after something, it's going to require focus. And so you're doing too many things. And across the spectrum, you can balance being a good father, a good husband, a good business owner, being fit. That's a lot of like who I am and what I've done over the years is doing my best to balance all of those things. But then when you go into any one of those categories, that is where we go to doing too many things. So I'm not saying if you're like me and I have 3 kids, I have more than one business, I've been married for coming up on 15 years, I'm just doing a lot of different things, and all of those things are important to me, and I'll always prioritize my time in those respective areas. So when I say when you're doing too many things, I'm not saying, oh, well, maybe you should quit being a father, or maybe you quit being a business owner. Obviously, that's not what I'm saying. It's too many things when you zoom into one of those areas. So if we take fitness and health, like just as a category, for example, you might try to pick up too many different habits within that category. You might be like, okay, well, I'm going to, change my diet. On top of changing my diet, I'm going to start training 6 days a week instead of 3. I'm going to start fasting. I'm going to start doing the sauna, red light therapy, cold plunge. And if you're not doing any of those things, you're adding too many things in this one category. And we can do this really in any category. You could go to your marriage, for example. While I'm not going to say that there's ever such thing as focusing too much on your marriage, like if you don't have good habits built up in your relationships, and you're like, well, we do 1 date night a month. And so now instead of that, we're going to do a date night every single week. We're going to take a trip together every single month. And then, twice a year, we're going to, take a longer 2-week trip together. Like just say you add all of these new things that you want, that you think will improve your relationship. And no doubt they probably would, but none of those things you're currently doing. And so to add them all would amount to failure, because you're not going to be able to actually do it. And again, going back to that perfectionism mentality, instead of doing one tiny thing that you could do to improve your marriage or relationships, or doing one tiny thing that you could do to improve your fitness or your health, you try to do too many things, and then you don't do any of them or you don't stick to them, and then you think that you're a failure, so you don't stick to any. You just quit the whole thing. So doing too many is the first and biggest mistake that I see. The other thing that I see is not too many different things. It's the magnitude of the thing that they want to achieve. And so now we're going down to maybe one thing, but it's just too big. It's too large. It's not something that you can actually handle. And I see this a lot specifically in the fitness world. I'll try to get outside the marriage examples and business examples here, but I see this in fitness where the magnitude, it might be one goal, but the magnitude is too large. So we're talking, okay, I want to do 1 million push-ups this year. I want to run a marathon this year when, you've never run a day in your life, or you want to do 100-mile ultra marathon, which is more like what I'm hearing today these days. It's like, I'm going to do 100-mile ultra marathon, and, I'm going to do it in July or something. You have like 6 months to train for this thing, and you haven't ran more than 3 miles in a week in the last 2 years. It's the magnitude. And now, I'm not going to say, don't chase your goals, don't go big. But if you set something that's massive and you don't actually have a very good plan for it, when it comes time to doing the thing, you're not going to do it. And then you're going to be on the same cycle as the too many things, but now it's just they're too large. The things that you want to do are too big. And so you're not really achieving anything. You're not like getting those small wins. So just an example to hit that home further is like if I just never ran, let's just say I had never really run a day in my life, and I want to do a 100-mile ultra marathon in 3 months, and I'm not trained for it. It comes up and I don't do it. Well, the reason I'm chasing a 100-mile marathon or maybe someone else is chasing it is just because they think it sounds cool. They think they want to do it. Like that's the bar that's been set through social media and everything else. But what would be really cool too? If you're not really a runner, a 5K. 5K would be awesome. Just train for the 5K and do really well in that. And then your next race can be 3 months later, and it can be a 10K, it can be a 15K, it could be a 50K, it could be whatever margin you want to increase it from there, but it's okay in your goals to start small. And I know that this goes against the grain with like setting big goals. I think you can set the biggest goals you want in your life, but if you have the wrong timelines for those goals, you're not going to achieve anything. So if you want to, going to the business example, if you're like, I want to create $100 million business, it's like, cool. How much time do you give yourself to do that? Well, if you said 10, 20, 30 years, cool. Maybe it's possible. Like maybe that's what it's going to take. Maybe it's going to take 2 decades of work and you'll actually achieve that. But if you're like, I want to create a $100 million business this year, it's like, oh, what's your business doing now? It's like, nothing. It's like, oh, okay, that's not going to happen, right? So there's nothing wrong with having that goal. Like I would never tell someone, you cannot achieve that. I would never say that you can't run a 100-mile ultra marathon. I would never tell someone that they can't start a $100 million business. I would never say that to someone. But I would tell you that your timelines might be wrong. Like the magnitude of what you want is awesome, but the timeline of how big it is absolutely incorrect. And so these are the 2 biggest mistakes that I see when people are setting goals, and we're going into 2025. And a big reason I want to put this podcast kind of into the feed where it did is because this is about where the lull happens. I know people were talking about that Quitter's Day earlier in January. I feel like most people make it a little bit longer than that. I think that they make it closer to the end of January, beginning of February. And then the quitting really starts happening. They start abandoning all the excitement and goals that they had. So with the two biggest mistakes people make, doing too many things or the things that are too big, the magnitude is too great, the solution is simple. So do fewer things. Like if you want to pick up those 15 new habits in fitness, you want to do the cold plunge, the sauna, the red light therapy, you want to work out 6 times per week, intermittent fasting, you want to take a new multivitamin and new supplements, and like you want to do all those things. I get it. But if you're not doing any of those things right now, just pick one. Just pick one. And you can do this across every area of your life. Just pick one thing, even if it seems like it's a little bit easy. Of that entire list I gave, it's like, you know what? I think intermittent fasting would have the biggest, bang for my buck. It'd be worth the most time, worth my time. I'm going to do that. And then after you feel like you got a handle on that, it could take 2 weeks, 2 months. Doesn't matter. Once you got a handle on that, be like, you know what? I'm feeling pretty good about that. I think I'm going to start trying to add the sauna into my schedule. It's just one step at a time, as opposed to adding them all at once. Adding them all at once is a recipe for failure. Adding one at a time, once you kind of have it locked in, and then doing the next one, that's how you want to execute those things. Now, the next on the magnitude, like I said, I get it. You got big goals. I've got big goals. But set milestones along the way. Okay? It's okay to have the big goal. But set milestones of like, okay, I do want to run that 100-mile ultra marathon, but you know what? I've never done that. I don't really know what it would take. So I am going to say I'm going to run a 5K race, in the next 6 weeks. Do that, see how it feels. Just get used to a race, like what it's like to show up for one, sign up for one, starting to learn basic fueling strategies, hydration strategies. And then the next race can be twice as long, 3 times as long. And then you can start to forecast better, in all honesty, because I'm not saying like, oh, do the 100-mile ultra marathon in 2 years. I'm saying sign up for the races. It could be 1 month at a time. They could be 6 weeks apart. They could be 6 months apart. But you'll start to better realize and gauge the reality of what you're wanting to do. So going smaller to go bigger. So you're going smaller to go bigger. You're setting these milestone goals that are just like little check-ins that are going to help you get better along the way. And then eventually you will get to that ultimate goal. Like you want to run that 100-mile ultra marathon. But now you're going to be seasoned. Like I've done 8 races before this. I know what races are like. I know what I need to wear. I know what I need to, eat and how to fuel myself. And like, I understand what it's like to actually fit this kind of training in with family life. You get to answer so many questions when you set these milestones. So you go smaller to go bigger. And that's it. That's all I wanted to hop on here and say is like, I am in your corner. Like I want you to achieve all your things, all your goals, all the things that you say you want to do. But sometimes we get caught up in the excitement of the new year, all the new things that we could do. We're doing too many things. The things that we want to do are too big and we're setting the wrong timelines. You can do all of it. You absolutely can. And I'm here for it. I want to do a lot too, but we got to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success and not failure. Remember, if you don't kill comfort, comfort will kill you.